We are set the name and the government that's the ruler and I. It's upon the soul as a fire and I.
You've had your share of pretty explosive encounters with the mainstream media in America. And you've accused the media of covering up government lies. Where do you stand now? How much can the mainstream media in America be trusted?
I don't think much at all. They're a soundbite news now, if you get what I mean, soundbite. There's no depth to anything. Plus, our major news organizations have really almost become monopolized. There's only like 3. Our media today is into creating the news rather than reporting it. And that's very dangerous when they're creating news rather than many people in this country only rely on the mainstream media for any information. But, you know, the internet is getting super powerful now. And that'll be next. See, that's what the government has to control next, is the internet. Whenever government says they're going to keep you safe, get ready, because you're going to lose your freedom.
Good morning, this is Ryan at xcannabis.com, and I'm going to do a little bit on professional journalism versus blogging. And honestly, there's a gray area, and then there's the 2 polarities. But I'm going to show you a clip from Fox News in Florida, which this was an investigative journalist team that was censored by Fox because Monsanto didn't want them to run the piece that they were going to run. Monsanto obviously gives them tons of advertising dollars, and Fox caved in to the money. And that's, you know, the clip I want to show you, but I also want to give you a little bit of perspective from my point of view. What I'm thinking is that there's a very strong need for blogging, and there's a very strong need for professional journalism. And the difference is that bloggers, you know, typically aren't journalists. They didn't go to school for it. They don't have a lot of, you know, the sources and resources that professional journalists have. They're just people with an opinion. Maybe they have facts, maybe they have a great presentation, but they're just, you know, pretty much everyday average normal people. And there's millions of them, millions upon millions of them that blog. And then there's the professional journalists that have, you know, the means to fly out to China and interview, you know, the activist out in, you know, Tibet or whatever, you know, and things like that. I mean, the resources and the credibility of professional journalism, you know, stomps bloggers by far. But in my opinion, blogging is so important because of the lack of corporatism behind it. You know, bloggers don't have to bend to the will of their advertisers, because like myself, most bloggers don't have advertisers. Most bloggers don't have financial interest driving their content. I don't, and my means of blogging, my reason for blogging, and I have over 30 different websites, about half of them are blogs. I blog on Mormonism, I blog on religion, I blog on politics, I blog on cannabis, obviously, which I guess falls into the politics idea. I blog on technology, I blog on do-it-yourself projects, I blog on philosophy, I blog on all kinds of things. And so, you know, I separate those things by different websites and different, you know, presentations. But, you know, I have reasons for blogging, and none of them are financial reasons. So I don't have advertisers saying, hey, if you don't kill that story, we're not going to advertise with you anymore. Or I don't have a boss expecting me to write a certain thing or to favor a certain group, you know, or a lobbyist organization saying, well, let's just favor those who are in medical marijuana and not those who are in the legalization movement, or let's favor those who, you know, are conservative and religious and not those who are atheist or otherwise. You know what I mean? I mean, there is that in our media. And really, when you think about it, and this is something I heard from George Carlin, and you know, I went and researched it, and really there's less than 10 major media corporations in the country, and they own most all of the media that we have, all the little papers, all the big papers, all the radio shows, all the, you know, it's like a big monopoly. Or, you know, and I've gotten into this word recently because the word oligopoly better defines it when there's multiple sources that group together and, you know, work towards cornering something in a market, and they usually use governments to regulate things and to restrict other things, this and that. And I just think that, you know, monopolies are not good for the free market and for the consumer, and for, especially in media, the truth. I think the truth is very important, and when there's only 6 or 7, you know, major media companies, big conglomerate media companies that own and drive all the content, really you're not getting a fair shake at good media. Which is why ever since like '93 I've been into computers and networking, and you know, like when there was no internet, we used to get on something called FidoNet, and then, you know, in local bulletin board systems we had friends that owned these bulletin boards. There was Psionic Blue, Dark Fortress, This Old BBS, whole bunch of them locally, and we would get on those and you know, share information all across the world. And this was before the internet. This was before Windows. This was before a lot of the stuff that, you know, we know so well now and take for granted. You know, it was just text back then. There was no, you know, at least on the computers that I was running, Commodore 64, an Amiga 500, Amiga 2000, and then, you know, later on I got into more powerful computers, but I was into anything technologically available to me because I love to share information. It was never about money then. It's not about money now. I just like, you know, an alternative. I don't like my media that I get off the TV. In fact, we don't even subscribe to cable. We do not get corporate TV, television, or cable TV or otherwise. We don't get any of that on our TV. We sign up for Netflix. And, you know, most of the news that I get is either from the local paper or from the internet. I don't subscribe to big corporate media sources anymore. I don't give them any money. I have no respect for most mainstream media. And so, anyway, I'm going to show you this clip. It's about 10 minutes. It's not the full story, but it's a good look at how Monsanto influenced Fox News and the Fox network in Florida, and killed this investigative journalist team on their story, and actually got them fired from their job for protesting against the censorship that they were trying to impose on these journalists. And anyway, it's good stuff, so I hope you get to check it out, and thanks for checking out my blogs and my video blogs and all the rest. I'm just one guy that does what a little I can. I'm not saying trust me. I'm saying research everything. Don't trust anybody. You know, don't believe it at face value. If someone tells you something, do your own research. You know, don't ever take it at face value. That's the most, you know, disadvantage you can be when you consider any information, is if you accept somebody else's information at face value. It's a big disservice to you and to others. All right, peace.
What Fox Television told us was that we were just the people to be the investigators.
Do any stories you want, ask tough questions, and get answers. So we thought, this is great, this is a dream job, fantastic. The very first thing they had us do was not to research stories, but to shoot this promo, which was The Investigators.
Uncovering the truth, getting results, protecting you.
And they had a film crew and a smoke machine, and we were silhouetted.
Investigative reporter Steve.
One of the first stories that Jane came up with was the revelation that most of the milk in the state of Florida and throughout much of the country was adulterated with the effects of bovine growth hormone, the artificial hormone that farmers were injecting into their cows so that they would produce more milk.
With Monsanto, I didn't realize how effectively a corporation could work to get something on the marketplace. The levels of coordination. They had to get university professors into the fold. They had to get experts into the fold. They had to get reporters into the fold. Of course, the FDA, let's not leave them out. They had to get the federal regulators convinced that this was a fine and safe product to get it onto the marketplace. And they did that. They did that very, very well.
It's a great time to be a high-producing cow. Posilac One Step, bovine somatotropin by Monsanto.
The federal government basically rubber-stamped it before they put it on the marketplace. The longest test they did for human toxicity was 90 days on 30 rats.
Posilac is the single most tested new product in history. and is now available to you specifically so you can increase your profit potential.
And then either Monsanto misreported the results to the FDA, or the FDA didn't bother to look in depth at Monsanto's own studies.
The scientists within Health Canada looked very carefully at bovine growth hormone and came to very different conclusions than the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S. did.
Monsanto's engineered growth hormone did not comply with safety requirements. It could be absorbed by the body and therefore did have implications for human health. Mysteriously, that conclusion was deleted from the final published version of their report.
They knew there were problems. They saw serious potential human health problems, and they stood up in Canada and said, we're not going to approve this because we don't believe it's safe.
We have been pressured and coerced to pass drugs of questionable safety, including the RBST. I personally was very concerned that there's a very serious problem of secrecy nature, and something needs to be done.
The FDA was then on the hot seat. They had to come up with an answer. They didn't come up with a good one, and they never took the opportunity then. I mean, what would they do? Pull it off the market and say we need to now do the job that we didn't do the first time? They didn't do that.
We wrote the story. We had it ready a week beforehand. They bought ads.
Farmers in the milk industry say it's safe, but studies suggest a link to cancer. Don't miss this special report from the investigative.
That Friday night before the Monday this series was to begin, the fax machine spit out a letter from this very high-priced lawyer in New York that Monsanto had hired. It contained a lot of things that were just off-the-wall false, just demonstrably false. But if you didn't know the story and you didn't know how we had gone about producing it, would have scared you as a broadcaster, as a manager.
And they decided that they would pull the story and they would just check it one more time.
But the bottom line was that there was no factual errors in that story. Both sides had been heard from. Both sides had had an opportunity to speak.
1 week later, Monsanto sent the second letter. And this was even more strongly worded. And it said there will be dire consequences for Fox News if the story airs in Florida. And this time they freaked. They were afraid of being sued, and they were also afraid of losing advertising dollars at all of the stations owned by Rupert Murdoch. And he owned more television stations than any other group in America. And that's 22 television stations. That's a lot of advertising dollars for Roundup, aspartame, NutraSweet, and other products.
So we got into a battle. And the first deal was the new general manager.
And his name's Dave. And Dave is a salesman, and, you know, he'd pump your hand. How you doing? How you doing?
Called us upstairs to his office, and he said, what would you say if I killed this piece? What if it never ran? And we said, well, you know, we wouldn't be very happy about that. And he said, well, I could kill it, you know. And we said, yes, of course, you're the manager. You could kill it. It would never air. And he's hemming and he's hawing and he's back and he's forth. And we couldn't figure out, what is this all about? And finally he blurted out, look, would you tell anybody? You know, I said, I'm not going to lie for you. About a week later, calls us back to the office and says, okay, we'd like you to make these changes. In fact, you will make these changes. We said, well, look, let us show you the research that we have that shows that this information you want us to broadcast isn't true. To which he replies, I don't care about that. I said, pardon me? And he said, that's what I have lawyers for. Just write it the way the lawyers want it written. I said, you know, this is news. This is important. This is stuff people need to know. And I'll never forget, he didn't pause a beat, and he said, we just paid $3 billion for these television stations. We'll tell you what the news is. The news is what we say it is. I said, I'm not doing that. And he said, well, he said, if you refuse to present the story the way we think it should be presented, you'll be fired for insubordination. I said, I will go to the Federal Communications Commission and I will report that I was fired from my job by you, the licensee of these public airwaves, because I refused to lie to people on the air. And it's thank you very much. You'll hear from us right away. Well, 24 hours came and went and we didn't hear a thing. And about a week later he calls us back, and now we've changed strategies. How about if we pay you some money and you just go away? And I said, how much money? Because, you know, when somebody offers to bribe you like that, I always want to know if it might be worth it.
He was going to offer us the rest of our year's salary if we agreed not to talk about what Monsanto had done, to not talk about the Fox corporate response in suppressing the story, and to not talk about the story. Not talk about BGH, again, anywhere. Not take the story to another news organization. Just zip up.
I said, you mean if I want to go to my daughter's PTA meetings and explain what's in the school milk at the school lunch program? I can't. No. You can never speak about this anywhere.
And Steve says, okay, write it up. And I'm like, write it up? What are you talking about? Write it up. And I didn't say anything. And Dave, he wrote it up. And he FedExed it to us a couple days later. And he said, are you going to sign? And we said, nah, Dave, we're not going to sign that. And he said, well, send it back, okay? I said, no, Dave, we're not going to send that back.
It was, okay, we can't buy you out. We can't shut you up. Let's get the story on the air in a way that we can all agree it will go on the air. And we started rewriting and editing with their lawyers.
Well, during this 8-month re-review process, I say jokingly, they did things like, for example, they wanted to take out the word cancer. You don't have to identify what the potential problem implications. Any criticism of Monsanto or its product, they either removed it or minimized it. And it was very, very clear, I would say, almost every edit they made to the piece, that was the aim.
And we'd change this and this and this, and then that wasn't good enough. Okay, now change this and this and this. Now change this and this. Version after version after version, 83 times.
83 times is unheard of. It doesn't happen. You shouldn't have to rewrite something 83 times. Obviously, they didn't want to put the thing on the air, and they were trying to drive us crazy and get us to quit or wait until the first window in our contract so that they could fire us.
They, in effect, announced that they were going to fire us for no cause. Well, this was a little much.
And Steve wrote a letter to the lawyer in Atlanta, whose name is Carolyn Forrest, the Fox corporate lawyer.
And I said, you know, this isn't about being fired for no cause. You're firing us because we refused to put on the air something that we knew and demonstrated to be false and misleading. That's what this is about. And because we put up a fight, because we stood up to this big corporation, and we stood up to your editors, and we stood up to your lawyers, and we said to you, look, there ought to be a principle higher than just making money.
And she wrote a letter back and said, you're right, that's exactly what it was. You stood up to us on this story, and that's why we're letting you go.
Jane sued Fox under Florida's whistleblower statute, which protects those who try to prevent others from breaking the law. Court judges found that falsifying news isn't actually against the law.
Florida's appellate court has ruled in favor of Fox 13. You may recall that Jane Acree, a former reporter here, sued Fox 13 in a whistleblower lawsuit, claiming she was fired for refusing to distort her report. The appeals court today threw that case out, saying Ms. Acree had no whistleblower claim against the station based on news distortion. Fox 13 Vice President and General Manager Bob Linger says the station has been completely vindicated by the rules.
Just set the rule and the people will follow. Broad is the road to get pain and sorrow.